We've got an extra special bike with us today. This is the new Multistrada V2 S. It's a bike I was at the international launch for last year, and today we're going to tell you about how the V2 S lives and survives and thrives on Indian roads. I have ridden this bike for the last few days now, and I can sum up this review as this is an awesome motorcycle, but this really is a brand new Ducati. It's a new chassis, new engine, redesigned styling to go with Ducati's new design philosophy that we're seeing across multiple motorcycles like the Panigale, like the Street Fighter, and of course the Multistrada. Now the engine itself is a new 890cc V-twin. It replaces the old 937 motor that was used across all Ducati's middleweight motorcycles, and this engine is now finding its way in all those bikes. For the most part, I really like this engine. I think that it has brought a breath of fresh air to the engine. It feels more modern, it feels smoother in the power delivery, the way you experience the power coming out of this engine. It still has those Ducati feel-good vibes through the motorcycle. When you accelerate, you'll feel a thrum through the foot pegs, through this entire area. The bike feels alive, and that is what Ducati people really like. This engine does that very well. I also think it sounds better. In fact, let me give you a small taste of that. Now, like all Ducatis, it starts in a way that you feel like the starter motor is about to give up, but then the engine bursts into life. Microphones never really capture that very well, but it's basically a mean, angry sound, and when you close the throttle, you get these sort of pops and burbles from the exhaust. It's a really exciting sound, but it's very different to that 4-cylinder and 3-cylinder scream. So you've got to be in the mood for aggression. Think of it as the bike equivalent of a V8 rather than a V12. And I also like the sound that this bike produces when you compare to the older engine. At lower revs, that was a fairly clattery sounding thing. It wasn't really special until you really got the speeds up. This sounds good most of the time, you know. It's only when you're really at low idle speeds where it's grumpy and not a very nice sound or feeling, which we'll get back to. But it sounds nicer throughout, and that is a more engaging thing. The performance is also awesome. It's a little more power than before. It's now 115 horsepower, slightly less torque, which used to be 96 Nm, it's now 92, but it's still a superbly fast engine, and I'm sure that this is quicker than the old Multistrada because this bike is now nearly 20 kilos lighter. Like the old Ducati V-twin engines, the character has not changed. So it is a whacking strong mid-range, and it also likes to rev. It revs nearly to 11,000 RPM. The red line marking there is 10,000, but it goes beyond that. For a big twin, there is a high rev limit, and this thing will reward you. It'll wake you up no matter how tired you are when you whack the throttle open. The performance this engine has to offer really is thrilling, and for example, if you're someone who loves spending extended durations of time on the rear wheel, it loves to wheelie. I am quite terrible at holding big wheelies, but switch the wheelie control off, you can keep traction control on, and it just lifts the front wheel really easily and quite aggressively if you're not aware of what you're doing. It is really good fun, but the counter side to that is that now that Ducati has gone to valve springs instead of the desmotomic valves on the old 937, like they did with the V4, you now have much longer valve clearance service intervals. Now, when we rode this bike last year, Ducati said the interval was just 30,000 kilometers, which was the same as the old engine, and that was a little disappointing. The nice thing is that they've now increased that to 45,000 kilometers. That is a long stretch of time before you have to do that expensive service. It's still lower than the V4, which is 60,000 kilometers, and I suspect that's because this is an engine that has two really big pistons moving up and down at nearly 11,000 RPM, and that puts more stress on parts all over compared to 4 smaller pistons moving at the same speed. That's the way I would look into why the valve clearance interval is different to the V4, but 45,000 kilometers is still really good. But we get to the but. It's like the old Ducatis in that it just does not like life on Indian roads, at least the common scenarios you find on Indian roads. If you get stuck in traffic, which you're inevitably going to do at some point if you live in a big city, this clutch is really heavy. I wonder if it's even heavier than the earlier versions. And if you're stuck in moving traffic, it's okay. But if you have the misfortune of being stuck in an evening jam in Mumbai where you're stuck in jam traffic for 20 minutes, half an hour, You'll get home and you'll want to put an ice pack on your forearm. It is that much of a workout. So this engine wants to be free of traffic in that regard. Another reason why it doesn't like being stuck in traffic is because, like before, it does not tolerate being below 2000 RPM. I have stalled this engine numerous times in traffic, just going over speed breakers, thinking it's all good. I'm in second gear, boom, engine off. Going around slow corners in the city. So you've got to be ready covering the clutch when you're doing these really slow maneuvers, because it's not tolerant of that. The third thing is heat. Now there is an improvement here. This bike is not throwing hot air directly on you. In that regard, I would say it's better than the Triumph Tiger 900 because that has a hot air blast coming right onto your knee. This is better there, but you get it stuck in traffic and everything starts to get hot. You start to feel the heat build up through your legs. You feel all the bodywork get hot. The good thing is that temperature display out there gives you some confidence. I never saw it go above 104 degrees and the cooling system brings it down. But again, I did not get stuck in extremely bad traffic, so I don't know how it's going to do there. But you need to be prepared to deal with the heat that this engine is throwing out. It seems to be okay with managing that situation, but you need to be okay with it as well. And finally, the other character of a big Ducati twin that has not changed is that this is a really long-geared motorcycle. It doesn't want to be in sixth, anything below 90, 100, definitely not below 80. On the 3-cylinder competition, you can be in sixth gear well below 50 kilometers an hour. And in India, that kind of flexibility is really nice because we never get to hold steady speeds. We're always slowing down, accelerating, and making way for traffic and things like that. So it means you got to work the clutch more if you're at really slow speeds. If you're moving, you have a nice bi-directional quick shifter. And it means that you also need to stay out of that sub 2000 RPM zone. The upside to that long gearing is that the high speed performance of this engine is unparalleled in this class. You can hold really high cruising speeds on the highway and everything is calm. There are no vibrations. If you hold those sort of speeds on a Tiger 900, you're really going to be feeling it in the bar. The wind protection is very good. You can sit in this comfortable, happy space and hold the kind of speeds that the fastest Indian single-cylinder bikes cannot manage in their top speed. It's that kind of performance. Where you will be able to access that in India, for how long and how safely, is a completely different matter. But that is the strong point of the Multistrada V2. Open roads, showed some space to open up the engine. It's awesome. Multistradas have always been about great sporty handling as well. At one point, a Multistrada was the fastest bike to ever go up the Pikes Peak hill climb. And this one holds that identity as well. It's a new chassis, monocoque frame, 199 kilos without fuel. So with the tank 90% full, it's a 19-litre fuel tank. You're looking at a curb weight of about 215 kilos, which for the class is really good. So it is lighter than the old bike, but make no mistake, this is still a large motorcycle. Now, part of the new visual design is that new face, which looks a little sleeker, a little more compact, but from the rider's point of view, this is still a big motorcycle. And let me demonstrate what it's like first. Seat height is adjustable between 830 and 850 mm. I prefer the 850 mm seat height. And this is a very, all-day comfortable neutral riding position. I prefer it over the old Multistrada because there's a bit more room for the rider to move around. You don't feel as locked into the motorcycle. The handlebar is nice and wide. It is a bit of a stretch forward, and especially when you're taking lock-to-lock turns, that is something you will notice. But for me, this is a really comfortable riding position. But to get the point across that this is a large motorcycle, I'm going to call Ashley in now to give you a demonstration of what the seat height is like. And there are three things that you need to notice here. First, Ashley, please give it a shot. We're at 850 mm. Okay, so that is absolutely tiptoes and you feel the weight, right? Okay, now let's try something. You can get off the motorcycle. We're going to lower the seat height now, and you do that in a similar fashion to the Himalayan, where you take off this seat, pop out this seat. There's this single tabs out here that you flip over, slot the seat back into its lower position, make sure it's in place, slot this in. Okay, all right, Ashley, let's try this again. This is now 830 mm. You can see that the seat height is lower. There's a bit of a visible gap here. Let's see how that is for you. All right, how is that? Noticeably better?
Much better.
So you can feel the bike is lower. But there is one more trick though, and that's because this bike has electronically adjustable suspension. If I keep this button here held, it lowers the rear shock to a minimum height. You feel that?
Yes.
Is that better now?
Much better, much better.
So still a tall, imposing motorcycle, but getting better and better for you. Okay. This minimum seat height setting on the rear preload can be kept engaged, and whenever you bring the bike to a halt, it will remember that. You just need to keep an eye out to see that there's that min written on the TFT. So that is a clever feature. Now, when it comes to handling, this electronically adjustable suspension on the S model really plays a role in how the bike feels. You can just change the riding modes and the suspension will change to match that, or you can hit the suspension button, change the kind of suspension setup you want within that mode, and you can choose between comfort, dynamic, and what they call low grip, where I suppose it just softens up the suspension and allows the tires to find grip in wet and cold conditions. You can also go into the suspension tuning settings and go from hardest to hard to medium to soft and softest. I actually found softest on the rear shock was too soft. It felt completely underdamped, and when you go over a speed breaker, it kind of chucks you up. Soft, medium and hard, that is the sweet spot between the suspension modes, depending on what riding mode you're in. And you do feel a clear difference in the motorcycle. When it's in one of the gentler settings, the bike just floats along on the highway in a really nice way. But it's not hardcore adventure bike suspension in that you can just throw it at any bad roads and feel nothing. This is not a Tiger 900 in that respect. So if you have sharper bumps in the road, badly made roads like you see in Mumbai, or sharp speed breakers, you're going to feel it on this motorcycle more than you would on an ADV. Still very comfortable, but consider it a comfortable sport touring motorcycle rather than a comfortable ADV. The offset to that is that the handling is really good. It's great fun in the corners, steers very quickly, you're sitting upright and in comfort, the braking is strong and powerful. You are in a sense of great control with this motorcycle. There's also a lot of lean angle available, so you will have a lot of fun in the corners and do so in comfort that you wouldn't find on other Ducati motorcycles. So in that regard, the Multistrada is really versatile. Can it go off-road? Well, sure, there's about 170 mm of suspension travel, there's decent ground clearance, but you get the sense that it doesn't want to be there. The front end sort of skips over bumps rather than soaking them in, even if you put it in enduro mode, and everything just looks really pretty and expensive. It's not something you want to take a risk with dropping this motorcycle. So I look at it as a touring bike that if you need to get through bad terrain, it'll get you through it. But it's going to be a tall bike that requires some skill and confidence from your end. I was out riding the other day. I decided to just explore some trails, sandy trails, light rocks. It's good fun, it'll do it. But don't ask of too much from the Multistrada. And that's a conscious decision from Ducati. They have made this a bit more of a road bike than it used to be, because they're trying to make way for the Desert X to be the off-road adventure bike. So the Multistrada V2 is a sporty motorcycle. There is no doubt about that. It's a great looking bike to me as well. I know that people don't love the front end as much as it was on the old bike. It is a little less imposing, but it's sleek and I think it looks modern and good. I also like that they've put the indicators down here now rather than up in the handguards. Again, a small thing, if you drop the bike, that would have been a very expensive part to replace. Now it's probably just going to be an expensive part to replace. Beyond that, I think this is a good looking motorcycle. Quality, fit, finish is really nice in most parts, like it usually is on Ducatis, and there are a few areas that feel cheap. This windscreen adjust, for example, the plastics feel a little flimsy. The under-seat adjustment plastics feel a little flimsy, but beyond that, it's a feel-good, expensive Italian motorcycle with nice high-end componentry like Brembo brakes and, well finished all over. There's also a new screen. It's still 5 inches, new layout, new switchgear. Takes a little time to learn how to use that screen properly because there's a lot of adjustability and different ways to enter different menus, and you can get a little lost in there at the beginning, but you'll work your way around it. And that, I think, brings us on to the topic of price, and yeah, this is where things get a little complicated. Ducatis have always been expensive motorcycles, and in the past 3-4 years they've gotten to be very expensive motorcycles. The base Multistrada V2 is now 19 odd lakh rupees, and this is as good as 21 lakh rupees ex-showroom. There are a few problems with that. For example, at this price, I'm now expecting to see a bigger display on the motorcycle. 5-inch TFT displays, this one gets the job done all right, but they're commonplace on bikes that cost 10 times less. There is no heated grips as standard on this bike. Important thing on an adventure bike. There's no tire pressure monitoring as standard. You can have both those features if you pay more for them, but they don't come with the motorcycle.
The bike doesn't get keyless ignition either, and that feels like an even more glaring omission when you recall that the previous gen V2 S and even the 950S that came before that both had this feature.
And then there's the brakes. Now, I did say that these brakes work well, and they do, but at 24-25 lakh rupees on road, I want higher end brake components. That is a Brembo M4.32 caliper, which was top of the range maybe 15 years ago. It was superseded by the M50, which was superseded by the Stilema, which is superseded by the Hypure. And on this motorcycle, I still get the M432s, whereas even Tiger 900s are giving you Stilema calipers. They will give you better performance, they'll give you better feel, they're lighter calipers. And if Ducati is charging so much, I would like to be getting that sort of high-end equipment as well. The other problem with the pricing is where its rivals currently sit. Now, for example, the Tiger 900 Rally is about 16 lakhs. The GT, which is a closer rival to this bike, is less than 15. The Tiger 1200 GT and 1200 Explorer are cheaper than this motorcycle ex-showroom. The GS 1300 starting price is just about 2 lakh rupees more, and that makes this a bit of a hard sell. And in that sense, the Multistrada V2 is a bike for Ducati purists because it is giving you that awesome Ducati experience with comfort that you wouldn't get in a bike like a Street Fighter or a Monster. So I see people who really want that Ducati riding experience to belong with a band. This is a great bike for them, but they've got to be ready to spend a lot of money on it. There's also the fact that it is hard to use in our riding environment, especially if you're in a big city where bad traffic is a part of daily life. So like I said all the way back at the beginning, this is an awesome bike, but it has its drawbacks. And if you're aware of those drawbacks and you're willing to pay the high premium that Ducati wants you to, this will be a bike that really thrills you and you will enjoy your time spent with it.